Andy Erwin, my friend, it's good to see your face.
Ryan, man, it is always just a comfort in life to have a conversation with you. It's great.
Look at you. Is that your producer office on set there?
It
Your
is. It's
truck?
my mobile production unit. I went back 2 movies back. I decided like I moved to Nashville and I needed a truck, so
Yeah.
I got a Raptor,
Yeah.
and I take it to every movie because I'd get tired of waiting on transpo and I just jump in the 4-wheel drive and go where I want. It's my mobile office, so it's great.
Yeah, makes total sense. I have yet to have a trailer of any sort that I don't share with somebody
Yeah.
else.
Uh-huh.
So I just make sure that if I'm renting a car, it's big enough that I can like take a nap in or something,
Yeah,
because it's
that's great.
basically your office. Your
It's
trunk
just
has got all your weather gear in it, and
creature comforts, man. It was funny. Yeah,
exactly.
on my last film, we had a big snowstorm that hit, and Zachary Levi, we were trying to get him out to set, and this big location that was way across this other field, and I got tired of waiting for the transpo vans, so I probably offended some teamster somewhere, but I just grabbed my truck
Yeah.
and we put it 4-wheel drive, and I picked up Zach, and we went 4-wheeling across the field. So it was great. It's great.
Dude, and not only is your office have, the comfort of a nice place for you, it can just take you wherever you just need to go
Yep.
faster than anybody else.
Might say something to my
So that's cool.
my control freak nature, but yeah, something like that.
Hey, well, listen, I was just thinking when we were setting this up, you and I met.
It was back in like I think it was like 2004 or 5, and we were there with a little documentary as our first narrative, or as our first feature length doc, and on
Yeah,
9/11, and it was a labor
crossing
of
the towers,
crossing the
right?
towers, and so we had worked on this doc as a labor of love for a couple of years, and so we got selected as one of the Crystal Heart winners there at this beautiful film festival in Indianapolis. And you guys were the darling of that festival. You guys were like the like the people we all wanted to be. So you had been there, I think, the year before or 2 years before, and then won everything with Saints and Soldiers. And so
Yeah.
we were terrified of our own shadow when we got there because we didn't know what we didn't know. And we showed up, and you and Adam, I think, saw my brother and I like shivering in the corner somewhere, and you're just like, hey, let's look out for these kids. And you pulled us to the side and kind of walked us through like how it all was going to go down, and we kind of, I think, like permanently kind of emotionally imprinted on, okay, follow those guys. And so I think it's just, there's something to be said that like this industry is like really cyclical, where it's like the people that you end up being a guide to at some point end up becoming a peer at another, and then you guys end up doing stuff together. And so
Yep.
we always tease that you be kind to the interns because you never know when you're going to need them for a job. And
Absolutely.
so you guys were kind to us, and we never forgot that. And then when we finally kind of began to find our footing, we started talking more peer to peer.
Yeah, no, it was really great. It was great hanging out with you guys, and it was one of the highlights, certainly, of that experience of taking that movie out and seeing your movie, of course, too. And it was just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Those were good times for sure. Now, I want to go back in time just a little bit.
Yeah.
You guys, you and your brother John, even though he's not on the podcast, we
Yeah.
will definitely mention him from time to time. He is a real person. We
Honorable
don't see him
mention.
very often, but he
Honorable
is an
mention.
actual real person. He
Yeah.
does exist.
Yep, he does.
He's not a cardboard cutout that you just stick in the passenger seat
Any
so you can drive in the
anymore.
HOV lane.
We hired a real person to play him these days. So yeah.
Oh, good,
It's
good.
Yeah.
So you guys, I remember you guys. I think you guys are from Birmingham, Alabama. Is
Yep.
that right?
Mhm.
Have I got that right?
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
how do you? I remember John telling me one point that your dad was in TV, or you guys did some
Yep.
sports stuff or something. How do you guys kind of get into the film world? Where does that come
You
from?
know, it was a combination of just kind of being born into the industry and having a brother with a hero complex. But it was just I think John always wanted to be in movies. I always was entertained by stuff behind the scenes, but
Okay.
I'm more of a natural introvert, and John's more of a dreamer. I'm a doer. And so my brother and I, we were around my dad growing up. My dad was in news television, started at Channel 11 in Dallas, and then transferred over to a CBS affiliate in Birmingham. So we grew up there, and so we were studio rats. We always grew up behind the scenes. And so when my brother was 12, I was 15. They allowed us to use the equipment from midnight till 4 a.m. if we'd work as camera guys for this station for $10 a day. I think we broke a lot of labor laws, but we would kind of work behind the scenes, and we just kind of learned and tried things on. And So it kind of developed into this hobby. And then I went off to college in upstate New York. And then John got a job as an ESPN camera guy for somebody that got sick when he was in high school. And that kind of developed this way to pay the bills for us to have this hobby on the side. And I was just like, that's way cooler than what I'm doing. So I dropped out of school and came home. And we were working, for about 5 or 6 years, as ESPN camera guys, doing sporting events and traveling around the country. And then the other 5 days of the week, we would just make no money at this hobby of saying we're going to make movies one day. And so that led into documentaries, that were, we never made any money at, but it was like a labor of love and learning how to tell stories. And then, ultimately music videos, and
Right. Yeah.
did music videos for years, and got really good at blowing things up. If we didn't know how to end a music video, we just say things blow up. And I think the last music video that we did was this big band, rock band called Skillet. And the video, I think the treatment, we gotten lazy at that point. I think the treatment just read, the band comes out, things blow up, it starts to rain, more things blow up, it stops raining, everything blows up. And that was it. And
It's good pitch. Good pitch.
Yeah, they liked it, and that video went on to have like 500 million views on YouTube. So so we did that for years until we finally kind of had the courage to say, let's give this feature film thing a try.
Yeah. You guys have an interesting relationship. We'll talk a little about you guys kind of directing together and the different things that you guys divide and conquer on. But I mean, I think, you guys have a huge list of credits, so I can't go through all of them, obviously. But I think one of the pinnacle ones is kind of your first true theatrically released films, your narrative,
Right.
which was October Baby, right?
Sure. Yeah, October Baby. That was. We were really nervous to kind of jump into kind of telling our own stories. There's another thing to, like music video director, to be like a hired gun and just be like, hey, we're there to service the artist, than to kind of step into being a writer director kind of combo and saying this is our story and we're the artist. And we were kind of nervous to make that jump. And the hard thing about the industry is like, there's just something about it that a lot of times the credits don't transfer. They'll give you experience to pull from, but as far as reputation, you kind of have to start over. So like if I wanted to be at this point, a really good commercial director and do like commercial work, like I would have to kind of pay my dues over again. That's not my world. And so jumping into feature film meant we had to start over and, really take a swing for it and pay our dues. And so we decided, rather than doing the music video thing and just blowing things up, we needed to do a small character drama. So we went out and we'd heard this story of a friend of ours, Gianna Jessen, who had a really interesting, story about her birth story and trying to find her birth mom. And it really had impacted us, really had a kind of a pro-adoption kind of slant to it. And was really just based on her life that really had inspired ours. So we had done this little character drama for a budget of $700,000, went out and raised the money ourselves, and just did it with no crutches or anything, shot it in 19 days and to see if we could do it. And we did it. Didn't expect it. It wasn't meant to be a controversial film. We didn't set out to be controversial. We just told an honest story, but people take what they want to from a narrative and kind of, with the pro-adoption story, like a lot of times people just took it as one thing over another. And next thing you know, it's on the front page of the New York Times. And so there was not, we couldn't find a distributor. And so we went out and raised the money ourselves to put it in theaters, and it did enough money in the box office and found an audience loyal enough to kind of allow us the next film. And I think for the first couple of films, we just focused on, instead of aiming for a home run, let's just get on base and let's just prove that we can do this, make our money back, and do the next one. And so, so that was kind of where we got our start. And then we kind of kept looking for these stories of, I think the other thing as a filmmaker is just trying to figure out, when you first start, a lot of what you're doing is by imitation. It's like trying things on that you've been inspired by, but it doesn't really naturally come from completely yourself. And, it's a lot of, imitation than it is really clearly emoting. And so the first couple were clunky, imperfect, but there's something really, I mean, we're not genius enough like you guys with Saints and Soldiers to come out of the gate with something brilliant. We just had to kind of stumble our way in. And so we didn't lead off with our best thing, but I think,
well, let's just be clear though. Like when I finished Saints and Soldiers and people said, is it good? My response always was, I think it's watchable.
Yeah,
I
well,
didn't know it was
that
going
that
to take off.
yeah, well that means you're legit. Like I feel like the most talented people in the industry are the ones that are very realistic about their work of saying like I don't know if it's good. I try to make the best film possible and they let the
Right.
audience decide. And so,
Yeah.
I think art is intrinsically selfish. It's about doing something for me. Being a craftsman and creating a product for an audience is an unselfish process of trying to connect with and communicate with a group of people. And so those first couple of films are really special. I'm very proud of what we did, but it was us trying things on and trying to learn what we didn't know and until we
Yeah.
kind of finally found our voice.
Well, and we're talking about movies like Mom's Night Out and Woodlawn, of course. And then you guys, this is where you knock it out of the park. I mean, you guys do I Can Only Imagine, and it
Mm-hmm.
just it blows up for you guys. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a huge, huge success. I mean, when you went into to making that movie, based on previous experiences, what
Mm-hmm.
what had you learned from the previous movies that you were like, okay, on this movie, on I Can Only Imagine, these are going to be our tools, or these are the things we're going to make sure that we do so that this movie succeeds. What was in your
Yeah.
toolbox when you got to that movie?
Well, I think we'd finally found our voice, and I think
Okay,
that razor edge between success and crazy is really really thin, and you can fall on one side of that very easily over the other. And so I think the I Can Only Imagine story could have been like one of those like radical stories people tell of like ultimate failure and destruction. We were really close to that, and we walked that line I think as close as you can. But I think
sure.
the success of it was really rooted in failure because on Woodlawn was our third film, and out of my body of work, it's the one that I find most special. It was the story that got me into filmmaking. It was, I grew up with that as a bedtime story. My dad is played by in
Sean
the
Astin,
story
right?
Sean Astin, a mutual friend of ours that's been in one of your
Yeah,
films,
yeah,
and so the character is based on my dad and a couple other people. It's an amalgam, and it's a true story that my dad would grow up telling. As we grew up, my dad would tell it as a bedtime story. So that was the one that was the most personal. And I
mm-hmm.
think when we did it, I think it's one of the most honest things that we've done. And when we finished it, it came out with self-funded $13 million budget, and it came out and it didn't reach critical mass with an audience. Like it didn't really click. It didn't do bad, but it was the first thing that we had done that worked with the critics, and it was the first thing that we had done that got an A+ cinema score. And the cinema score system is an independent organization, and that rate does independent polling across the country for every wide release every weekend. And an A+ is really rare, and so there's only been like I think 65 70 of them in the history of cinema score since like 1978, and so it's rare. So it proved that
Yeah,
okay, we're connecting with an audience, but we have to have something that's connected to something, a bigger piece of IP, and trying to find something that creates that momentum we're looking for. So we felt like it was the right kind of story. We just need to go once more around the block. And it's like
yeah, I see.
it was like the idea that we found our voice. It's like that's a song that's in our range. We know how to do true stories, underdog stories, redemption stories. And so if you look at the DNA of I Can Only Imagine, it's very similar to the DNA of Woodlawn. It's about somebody finding their voice, an unlikely hero, and about a redemption, kind of a family unit. And so one's a football team, the other's a father-son relationship. But when we
Yeah,
found Imagine, it was in development at Sony, and when we kind of got to it, we were like, we had a really different vision of what that needed to be, and it was brought to us by the artist. And when we kind of got the details of the story, we are like, we have a very different take on this, and than had what had been developed. And we came to an impasse where they read our script. We did a page one rewrite.
mm-hmm.
John and Brent McCorkle, the writers. And when they read it, they just was like, we don't feel like there's an audience for this. And we read your script and really didn't connect with it. And but it's one of those things that it's crazy to go all in every hand. That's delusional. If you're in a poker match, in every hand you're going all in. But there's certain
Right.
hands where you feel like you have the right cards and you got a hunch, and it's time to just go all in. And so we were like, this is our sink or swim. Either this is going to work, or we're not going to be doing films anymore. And so we bet on the hand. We found out that the rights were lapsing, stepped in and acquired the rights from instead of Sony, um, and then we kind of went out and did our movie. And so we raised the money for it, and didn't cast Dennis Quaid until we were half through filming. And Dennis Quaid came in to play the father
Oh,
character.
crazy.
And when he came in, there was a scene. There's a breakfast table scene in that movie, that kind of is the crux of it. It's an 8-minute scene, no music, no really flashy camera movements. It's just these two characters, these two men, a father and son, kind of really
Yeah,
getting gut level honest. And it's a beautiful scene. And
it really is.
Dennis came in and was dialed into another level that day. And he just really embraced his age, his wrinkles, the gruffness of the character. And this guy, instead of trying to be emotional, it was about suppressing emotion. And this guy that had been a child abuser saying, I don't want to be that anymore, but I don't know what else to be. And he's fighting for his soul. And this son, struggling with the idea of, how do I let this guy have a second chance who I don't want to give it to him? And Dennis performed the scene. Beautiful moment. I was like, okay, we've got great and good in this scene. And this first time actor, John Michael Finley, that's playing Bart, we flipped around for his coverage, and he just responded to Dennis and took his level up to another level. I was like, oh, this is a truly great scene. And then we bet on it and picked Roadside and Lionsgate to take it out. And this little film that, $7 million budget, that was predicted to do two to four opening weekends. For the opening weekend, 2 to 4 million. It
Killed it.
opened 1,700 screens, did 17 million, got our second plus A plus cinema score, did a 5x multiple, and did 86 million domestically. It was the number one
Yeah.
independent film of 2018, and that just blew the doors open. We didn't expect that coming.
Is that the film then that creates the relationship with Lionsgate that you currently have? Is
Yeah,
that where it starts? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. It was, on the back end of that, it was one of the more profitable films for Lionsgate that year, and um, and so, just because of the margins, and they came to us and said we want a long-term deal. And so we had heard that Tyler Perry was leaving Lionsgate and was going over to, I think, to Paramount. And we were like, we really want to fill Tyler Perry's slot. And we had this dream of starting an imprint, kind of starting our own label, and we had this idea of Kingdom Story Company, and the idea of looking for other redemption stories to tell and having a home. And so they brought us in, and so we went out and hired. We talked to Tyler's attorney, Matt Johnson, and he liked what we were doing and wanted to be a part of it. And he, along with the rest of our team, negotiated a deal that we didn't think we could ever have, where we have, creative control and just really a home where they let us do our stories. And it's been a great relationship. Lionsgate, the thing I like about Lionsgate is it's one of those rare companies that is a lot of really successful film producers are in key roles. And so, like the people that I report to at Lionsgate, like Joe Drake and Nathan Kahan and Aaron Westerman, they've done Seth Rogen movies, and they've done Joe did Juno and different movies like that as a producer. And so they really understand the plight of the independent filmmaker and those films that are our size, and there's this scrappy blue collar quality. So that's where we set up as our home, and we just renewed for a second term. And it's, that's kind of led to us being able to scale our movies.
That's pretty amazing. So yeah, so that's when you started Kingdom Story Company then.
Yep.
And you guys, even though Lionsgate is based obviously in Los Angeles, at least the main office is, but your company is based in Nashville. Is that
Yep.
am I remembering this right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
We haven't
similar.
been we haven't been there. We haven't been to the office to hang out with you guys yet. So
Well,
I'm
you've been
thinking you
invited,
told
but
me Nashville. I
you've
know
been
I need to
invited,
come.
but you're California cool now. So,
Oh, it's
but
happening now. Now that you put the challenge out there, you're going to
okay.
see me in the new year.
Hey, I've got a parking spot with your name on it. Come on.
All right.
Uh,
I want to sit in your office.
well, we
We could
with
go do donuts in the field when it
yeah,
rains.
come on. We'll go cow tipping. But for us, a big part of it was strategic. You know, we're at a place where we had to move from Birmingham. Birmingham wasn't sustainable just because of, even just direct flights out of the airport and trying to recruit people there. It was just very difficult to kind of hub
Sure.
out of that once we scaled. And so, but we also felt like, Los Angeles, we what we feared was kind of what politicians go through when they get elected to DC and they become part of the Beltway. They go to make a difference for the constituents, but it's very easy to kind of get sucked into a different way of thinking and lose touch of the people they're representing. And so, we just felt like we needed to live amongst the people we make product for, which is really, something that's universally accessible and something that's not exclusive to any people group, but something that's very much embracing that it's a middle American audience. And it's who we are. It's who I am. We're blue collar. And, blue collar stories can work and be accessible outside of that, but they do have to have a defined audience. And so we wanted to make sure that we stayed connected. And so we felt like Nashville had that DNA. And a lot of people from the film industry that are very much of that same sensibility are moving there in droves right now. So there's a lot of those friends that have been transplanted in the past 6 months from LA to Nashville. So it's a growing hub. It's close enough to Atlanta
Yeah.
to do work there, but it's a good place to kind of have a little room to breathe. So we set up office there about 4 years ago, and man, it's been a dream. It's been a dream.
That's great. Now, your brother, who's hopefully, has taken the time to listen to this episode of the podcast, is like, are you guys going to talk about me again? Because it's been, 15 minutes. So let's talk about John for just a second.
Sure.
When I first met you guys, John was kind of, my understanding was kind of co-directing with you, but he was also the cinematographer. Eventually that changes, and you guys bring on the very talented Christopher Kimlin, who's fantastic.
Yep.
He's great. He's actually been on the podcast before and said good things about you. More good things about you than your brother, but that's what happens, John. That's what happens, John, when you don't talk to me on social media very often.
That's funny.
I start bonding with Andy more. Anyway, your brother's very, very talented. I'm just joking. So tell me about the dynamic between you and John in directing. How does that work? Because I've met other brothers that do that kind of co-direct, and some say, well, he takes care of the visuals and I take care of the actors and blah blah blah. But how does it work in your dynamic?
With each brother directing team, it's dysfunctional, but in the best sense of the word. It means I think that creativity is usually the really good kind is spurred on by some sort of friction. And I think that what as filmmakers we gravitate towards a lot of times is control. Is we want control. We feel like if we had control, there wouldn't be any conflict and we could make the movie we would want. But usually filmmakers, when they get to that place in their journey where they have complete control, you get products that are very indulgent. It's for them. And I think there's a necessity of healthy friction, of being able to have a counter argument kind of point of view. But it needs to, in order for it not to get toxic, it has to be friction with respect. And, and I think, whether it's me and John, what we like to do is I like to surround myself with opinionated people, people that have a very defined point of view, that are passionate. They're not ego driven. They're not divas, but they're very much passionate about their lane, and they push me, because it's so easy to settle as a filmmaker. And so with John and I, we do that. We hit a film from two different angles. And so for years, what we've done, is, John comes at it very much from a cinematic point of view. I come at it from a very emotional, character-driven point of view. But, both of those are valid points of view. But I think there's just this healthy compromise that goes with the idea of best idea wins. And we extend that to our cast, to our department heads. It's not about who's right, who gets credit. It's about the best product, and the best idea wins. And it's an elusive thing. And so that's kind of what drives kind of our directing process. There came a point where John and I had kind of found our voices individually, together as a team. And then there came a point where John and I could start dreaming kind of our own things. And so, we're at a point in our career now where, we've done, the last one we did together, we did American Underdog with Zachary Levi and Anna Paquin, and Dennis Quaid was back in that one. And that one was it was so much fun. It was the hardest thing we've done because we did it during COVID, had to shut down uh, from a 45-day schedule down to we had to slim it down to 30 days to film a very complicated movie. Had to do it in the height of COVID, and then we had to shoot it and release it in 11 months, and it was stressful. But I think we
Yeah.
got to pull
Yeah.
all the tools out, and Kimlin did some of his best work. But on the back end of that, um, we were at the point where we got to dream a little bit of like, okay, we don't have to always be tied at the hip. We have a company together, but we can now pursue passion projects. So John was ready to go on
Mhm.
this movie, Jesus Revolution, that's coming out in February.
Right.
That's a beautiful work of
Yeah,
art.
it looks awesome, by the
I
way.
am so
Yeah, it's
proud
beautiful.
of the movie that they created. But John was ready to go, and I was like, "Hey, I need a little recovery time." And John didn't like sit still long, and so John was like, "I need to go do this movie." And I said, if you want to go do it, go for it. And so he picked Brent McCorkle, that was one of the writers of I Can Only Imagine, and edited and scored the movie. Very, very incredible talent, and directed his own projects. Brent and him went and co-directed this movie. And then when I was a producer on it. When I sat down to watch the first cut, I was just floored. I was like, what a beautiful work of art. And it's something that
Hmm.
is really impressive, that you don't expect it to be. It's very rebellious take, has very much the DNA of Almost Famous to it. And so he
It
did
does.
it.
Yeah, it feels kind of like that.
He did that one, and it's just a beautiful look at this time in history in the 1970s, early 1970s, late 1960s, where a similar kind of vibe amongst people looking for truth, and they were looking for it in LSD and drugs, and kind of burned out and kind of got disillusioned, and then this spiritual awakening happened among the hippie movement. After Haight
Hmm.
Asbury kind of bottomed out, and it's this beautiful, honest look with Kelsey Grammer playing this preacher Chuck Smith, and with Lonnie Frisbee, this hippie preacher, being played by Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen. And it's a gorgeous work of art. And so John did that one while I was developing my next film, Fearless, that's based on a New York Times bestseller about a Navy SEAL named Adam Brown. Jason Hall from American Sniper is writing the script, and I'm like, if there's one more projects I do
Oh,
before I retire, that's it.
dude, I saw you post that on social media, and I was like, oh yes, a military true story. Gotta love those. Gotta love those.
Well,
So,
you know,
hey, it's been great to talk to you. I know you're on a film set right now. But I wanted to ask you. Let's see, what's a good last question here before we wrap this up. Um, Okay, here it is. So for you, as a filmmaker, what is kind of one of your favorite resources? Is there a podcast out there? Is there a book out there? Is there an app, a website?
yeah.
Anything you just go to kind of like recharge your batteries? Anything
Yeah,
out there? Any books you want to recommend to anybody?
I'm more of an auditory kind of learner. Like I
Yeah.
usually, part of my process is John's an avid reader, and he loves to talk, and so he'll read stuff, and then I listen to it for 2 years straight. And so, by him telling me about it, and so that's kind of my more natural kind of thing. So I love, what's that saying that good artists create but great artists steal. And so for me, I love to listen for little tricks from other filmmakers swapping stories. So one of the things that I love to do is Hollywood Reporter has always done their roundtables during award season, and I will watch both the actors roundtables and the directors roundtables of them swapping stories. And they do it, and they have it moderated. They usually have 5 or 6, award-winning filmmakers sitting down and kind of sharing stories. And a lot of times you get this really great pairing of young filmmakers talking with older filmmakers, and they just swap stories, and they get competitive at the table and kind of one upping each other. But I'll listen for things that I'm like, ooh, I'm stealing that, that's a great idea. And
Yeah.
so like I
Yeah.
remember hearing Cameron Crowe, no, it was Matt Damon was talking about Cameron Crowe. Matt Damon was like, what's the best resource that somebody's ever used for you on a film set that helps you? And he said, I was working with Cameron Crowe on a project, and I was trying to find the rhythm of a scene, and he grabbed a piece of music and let me listen to it, ran a wire up for me to listen to this piece of music so I could hear the rhythm that was in his head. And he said it really helped me find this beautiful rhythm for a scene. And he's like, what a great resource to hear it musically. And I'm like, huh, I'm stealing that. And so
Yeah.
I've used that over and
Yeah.
over again, where if I have
That's smart.
I'll do a custom piece of music for a scene that's very specific, and have playback wire the actor so they can hear it if they're having a hard time finding the pacing or the rhythm or the emotion of a scene. And it's just something really intimate that really helps them kind of melodically hear what's in my head. And so I'll listen to that roundtable over and over again. I'll record, I'll look at them, and then I'll just try to kind of piece it together, and I'll go back and listen to it over and over again. That's a great resource for me.
Awesome. What a great share. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. This has been a great episode of the podcast. We kind of just threw it together, but I got to tell you, man, you dropped some really great tips for anybody who's listening, who's got that desire to direct their first film. You're probably very inspiring to them, and I'm sure they need to check out your movies and kind of, if I tell you this, if they go and they follow your guys' movies and how they trend and they really study it, they can learn a lot from you guys. You guys are great filmmakers, and you guys are also just really great people. So thanks for talking to me today. Tell me, Andy, where can people follow you and your shenanigans on social media?
Yeah, we've got on social media and on Instagram and all that. We've got, at Erwin Brothers, and then also we've got at Kingdom Story Company. And then my personal one is at Erwin Bro Andy. And you can follow us on all that. And then, kingdomstorycompany.com. Keep up with what products we got coming out.
I'm excited to see Jesus Revolution when it comes out February
February
right?
24th, be nationwide with Lionsgate.
I'll be there.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we've got your parking spot with your name on it in Nashville, Tennessee. Show up anytime, man.
Hey, listen, I am good. I am good for my word. Adam Abel and I will be showing up there within the next 3 months, I promise.
Well, let's make a movie together.
I'd love that too. All right, my friend, take care of yourself.
Thanks. I appreciate you, Ryan.